y'all's questions that you've been sending to me through the direct messages. When I get them, a lot of times I ask permission to answer this question on a live stream, and so far nobody has said no. So that's really awesome that we get to create learning opportunities and learning experiences with all of this. And of course, as you hear this stuff, chances are you're going to have experienced similar situations. So let us know how you're thinking about it, or let us know if you have any additional questions about what you're hearing and how it could apply to your own life, because I'm sure if you are thinking it, just like the rest of these viewer questions, other people are thinking it as well. So let's share the love. Let's all learn together. That's what this is about. So without further ado, let's get to the first question. I saw your message about the live chat. Yeah, live chat, like right now. And we could ask you questions. Sure can. I hope you can help me with this one. Well, lucky night. Let's do it. Last weekend, there was a big explosion at our neighbors, a big fire. Ooh. After all was over and clear, we could go back into our houses. My problem is that I'm kind of traumatized. Yeah, I bet so. So like last weekend, so this is less than a week ago. If I was 2 to 3 minutes earlier outside before the explosion happened, was smoking a cigarette, I would have been blown away. Yeah. Perhaps unconscious in that with my mother, who's 86 years old, still inside. Yeah, scary. I'm shaken, having palpitations, constantly reassuring where my house keys are, etc. I'm sure. Could you give me some hands-on advice about what to do instead of take a walk, talk about it, and write it down? Yada, yada, yada. Well, I guess as the yada, yada, yada part, I'm a Seinfeld fan, and that phrase yada, yada, yada was about like the sex experience with his date. Like, oh, yada, yada, yada. And Jerry's like, no, you yada, yada, the best part. So some of these things that you're talking about how to deal with this, you're yada, yada-ing some of the best parts. But I am sure that you are experiencing a degree of trauma in regards to this. So where the study of PTSD and trauma came from is shell shock and looking at war vets that were coming back from active service and active duty. And the study was about situations that really directly impacted them and that they got through and that they had very immediate reactions to, right, in day-to-day life. And what you're talking about here really kind of does mimic that, where you weren't directly involved in the situation. However, if you were out there 2 or 3 minutes earlier, and you probably knew people that were out there, they were directly impacted in the same way. It's very common to experience some of the cognitive patterns that we tend to get stuck in are called survivor guilt. From Romania, Miami. That's awesome. Survivor guilt, or imagining this, or your 86-year-old mother, if she would have been hurt. So basically what's happening is your brain is trying to integrate that this experience happened, and it's having trouble doing so because the mere fact that this occurs and it was completely outside of your control means that it could happen at any time. And your brain doesn't know what to do with that. And basically trauma occurs, the difference between stress and trauma. So we're all, programmed to deal with stress to some degree. As human beings, as animals, this is being pushed outside, immediate mastery, immediate comfort with our environment. It becomes trauma when the pain becomes way past what we have dealt with in our personal experiences up to that point, or it becomes trauma when there is we're really out of control and we don't know what to expect, and we have to start assuming some kind of like magical thinking about environment, right? That just kind of start not making sense. So when you have enough pain and you have enough lack of control, you can get trauma. Even if you aren't directly involved, like in this scenario, just how the situation happened, it lends itself to you being so completely out of control of this kind of thing happening in the future. That could have been you, just as easy as anyone else. Like people who are not killed when there's an active shooter situation happening in a school or stuff like that. This is the same type of trauma. And what your body is going to do is some version, in this situation, of flight or freeze, where your body is basically going to feel like there's a lion behind you and it can't figure out where it is, but there is a very active fear response. So you describe shaking, having palpitations, constantly reassuring where my house keys are. You feel out of control, and you like this thing that you're looking for with your house keys reminds you that you're in control of where you live, when this happened at your house where you're feeling out of control because this explosion just happened, and that's part of the trauma. So I'm not going to fill your ears with hands-on advice about taking a walk or talking about it or writing it down, which you already yada-yada'd. I know already more about trying to offer solutions that already are not going to work. But right now, just the verbiage that you used with I'm kind of traumatized, it sounds like there's still a level of denial about that occurring. So let's talk about the stages of healing from trauma. So first, there's going to be a level of denial that this occurred, which is still where you're at to some degree. Right? And after we get through this level of denial, there tends to be, once there is acknowledgement that this happened, there is anger, right? And then anger and bargaining tend to get very wrapped with each other, which are different ways of how we could have avoided this happening, or why this wasn't so dangerous, why I might be able to avoid dealing with how scary this is, trying to bargain our ways out of it. So you're almost past denial. So I'm kind of traumatized. You are traumatized. And I don't know where the anger is going to go. You kind of nonchalantly might have tossed a little bit my way when you're going, yeah, give me some advice, but like, don't tell me to do some of these things. It's like, and I can hold that for you. Like, that's cool. I don't take it personally. You just went through this thing. That's kind of what I do professionally, is hold space for people who are going through stuff. What I would encourage you to do is go get a book called The Body Keeps Score by Dr. Van der Kolk, and start reading a little bit more about how your body and mind are literally encoding those events and getting stuck and trying to integrate them. Learn the science behind it. I'm not going to blow smoke about telling you what to do. I'm not sure if you're ready to do anything. I'm not sure if you're ready to acknowledge that this has actually happened quite yet. Kind of still in the denial phase. But go check this book out. And if any of y'all are also dealing with trauma and trying to figure out what your course is for dealing with this would be a great place to begin. Is this like the grieving steps? I learned the 7 in therapy. Yes. So the dealing with trauma does have a lot to do with grieving, because you have to be willing to look at these events and grieve belief systems and grieve experiences that you had, and what should have happened, what could have happened, and what didn't, and what we were not protected from, and what the cosmos allowed to happen to us. And we have to grieve the limiting beliefs, the old belief systems that we've had, both before coming to that event, and then whatever we had to acclimate to survive those events, which often involve insulating ourselves in a castle of our own making, which some degree, until it's dealt with, we end up getting really sick. And not doing well until we can heal from those events, because us human beings are incredibly social. Can you repeat the name of the book? The name of the book is The Body Keeps Score by Dr. Van der Kolk. It's a great book. You'll hear me talking about it a lot. I've cited it a few times in the book that I have coming out soon in a few months here. Reading the book, Waking the Tiger. Do you know it? I've heard the title. Is it possible to have hidden trauma, like trauma I feel happened but can't remember? Yes, it is. There are a couple different versions of that. One is a repressed memory, which does happen. It is not as common as people thought it was when there were some really famous court things happening with kids and they were coming up with repressed memories and stuff. But it does happen, and sometimes the brain literally needs to push certain events out of awareness in order to consciously move on with life as we know it and not totally lose it. And at which point we repress a lot of those memories until we're at a stage in our life where we can remember them, or some environmental stressors happen that mimic those themes and they come out. A lot of times for women, that happens after childbirth. And a lot of times for men, that happens around midlife. And of course, happy to talk about some of the reasons why I tend to see that kind of thing happening. The other way that repressed memories happen is, or, repressed kind of, is as infants. So we don't really start remembering events and experiences consciously until we start developing language. That is part of how human beings integrate long-term memory into a chronology of events, right? So if you do have memories of specific events, they're after you started talking. But we do have memories, they're not chronological, before we start developing memory, we start developing language when we're about 3 or 4 years old. And that is through emotional climate, which is incredibly important. We remember feeling safe, or we remember feeling attuned with, and we remember feeling valued, or we remember feeling ignored and rejected or scared. And those literally get imprinted on us from a very, very early start in our lives. And it's not that we don't, we remember, the body keeps score of those memories as an early social, incredibly intuitive social primates as we are. However, if you don't necessarily have to have chronological memory for to get off to a good start or to get off to a very distrustful start in the world as a human being. I love your TikToks. Oh, thanks. I love that you love them. How do I deal with a boss who is insecure and needs to assert her power by finding fault? Let her find fault and lose the power struggle as quickly as possible. Make yourself totally not fun to play with. And just take it and leave it, and completely don't take it personally. And if that yourself totally not fun to play with, and just take it and leave it, and completely don't take it personally. And if that is really killing your morale at work, go start looking for a different job. I think a lot of times people get really bothered by bosses, and it is, hey, why wouldn't we? A lot of times bosses can be jerks, and there are a ton of bosses out there, not a whole lot of good leaders, and that's really tough. I'm not sure if my connection is staying really stable. Could y'all let me know if you're hearing me consistently here? I want to make sure is it working as well as it can be. But anyway, so bosses. So when you have a boss that's not very good, who's a crappy leader and uses criticism to try to motivate you, and doesn't sandwich the positives, and some of this basic administrative servant leadership stuff that a basically good leader should know how to do. If that's not what you're encountering, stop looking to be identified with at work. Which I think is really tough for a lot of people. In American culture, in so many different ways, there's so much pressure on how we can provide and what that can look like. A little bit, but not too bad. Thanks, y'all. Thanks for letting me know. If it starts to be really problematic, please let me know. I'll try to figure out something different with the connection. I'm on a family trip right now currently. It's not in my old stomping grounds, if you will. It's not consistent. Okay. So a lot of times, and especially in American culture, and especially in really industrialized areas, really is a very metropolitan culture kind of thing, very urban culture, to over-identify in many ways with our profession. And it is really important, just like we eat to live, you work to live. You don't eat to live, and you don't live to eat, and you don't live to work. That's not going to be a good way of going about things. We are fundamentally human beings, and unless you are really being acknowledged for your humanity in your workspace, and or you're just loving what you do, and you can fulfill your purpose in your workspace, no need to identify with it like that. Just Work to live. Screw it. Who cares what that boss thinks? Until I can think of how to word my question. See a new bias therapist. How do I tell my therapist I'm scared to tell her what I want? Oh, that's such a good question. How do I tell my therapist that you're scared to tell her what you want? So if you have a halfway decent therapist, as soon as you let them know that you're uncomfortable with something in the working relationship, they should be able to get really human with you really quickly and help you feel comfortable. And if they don't, then you need to go find a different therapist probably. But just like with other relationships, say it. Just say it. And if what they respond back with helps you feel safe and heard and understood and seen, cool, keep rocking with it. And if it doesn't, the more clear we are with the cosmos, it gives a chance for the cosmos to be just as clear back with us. And it is very scary to do that for a lot of different reasons, for many different people, based on whatever we've experienced in life up to that point, tends to be how we see what is on the table with potentially losing by doing this. But let's push through that mindset of scarcity, allow ourselves to show up and just see what happens, especially in the kind of relationship with the therapist where if with anybody that should be safe to do with. And I encourage you to do it. Every time I talk about the bad stuff, I just cry and can't even talk about it. And I feel dumb. Okay, that's what it sounds like this is more about. You're scared to get vulnerable. And this is what happens for you with other people as well. This is probably a pretty significant relationship place where you get stuck with developing meaningful long-term connection with people. So what I would encourage you to do is muster all your courage to be as direct as possible, get as vulnerable as possible, and see what happens. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Can't find a therapist because I'm spiritual and have strange things happen. Well, you have strange things happen, like, don't we all? We're human beings. If you're spiritual, you shouldn't, again, speak up about it in therapy. If your therapist can't hold that space with you, then you're with the wrong therapist. Go find another therapist. The same as a romantic relationship. There are plenty of fish in the sea. If you're going to fail fast and fail off and get out there and leave it out on the line. And what happens if I'm too honest? With who? With yourself or with them? I don't know. What would happen if you're too honest? I don't know. You tell me. What I'm more curious about is what that lack of honesty is protecting for you. That's what I would want you to think about. Recovering addict here. I haven't been independent alone, and I'm almost 26. Yeah, that's very common for people who are abusing drugs and alcohol. So I'm a recovering addict, an alcoholic. My main thing was booze and tons of amphetamines and then layering psychedelics over it and like staying gone for a while. In my early 20s, I got sober, working in the woods with at-risk youth. And as a family therapist, something that I learned is that in many different ways, addiction plays out as a failed launching from our family of origin. It's like this thing that this habit that we develop that allows or creates an inability to be self-sustaining and independent in many different ways, and allows the family excuses or reasons to enable us and stay connected the only way that we feel comfortable knowing how to be, being scared of being on our own and being independent, as you talk about. So some of how you talk about being stuck here as an addict or alcoholic makes an incredible amount of sense. That's incredibly common. You're super normal. Hey, Dandy Logan, what's going on, man? You've become one of my favorite followers. Like really clutch comments and good points of views here. Mr. Dandy, nice to see you this evening. Let's answer another question here from viewer questions. So, hey, I really need some advice on this, and I hope you can help me. Well, I hope I can too. Well, this thing is, I got invited to a surprise birthday party of someone I used to talk to, but I don't know if he wants me there. Um, now, unless you want to like screw with them, and then yeah, like my screen keeps freezing. My screen keeps freezing. Y'all let me know if that gets any better. Thanks, Danny. Danny. Thanks, Logan. um, my name is Logan too, which is cool. And you know what's funny about Logans? I didn't meet another Logan until it was a very uncommon name. When I was 5 years old, I met my first Logan, and it was another little girl at a parade. And I was like, I was a little boy. I was 5 years old. There's this little girl, and I was like heartbroken. I felt, there was all this like built up little boy socialization stuff happening. I was like, oh, I'm a little girl. Thanks. I'm glad that's better. I never know. It's like broadband, Wi-Fi. I'm like out here, Michigan, during a family trip. So again, thanks for your patience with me. So again, going to the birthday party, if it ended well, go. If it didn't end well, don't go. If the relationship status, if they're in a relationship now, don't go to the surprise birthday party. If they're not in a relationship, go. And then if they're not in a relationship and it ended well, my question to you would be, what do you have to lose? And if the question to you is, really, if you have something to lose, then don't go. And if you really want to go because it's going to work for you and your bottom line and the core values for your personal integrity, and you might want to spend time with this person, or you want to celebrate their birthday with them, and you can do that with non-attachment, go have fun. That's a whole lot of information probably to share with you about like very little information that you shared with me, but there's the information tree about whether or not you should go to this surprise birthday party. All right, I'm going to rock the next question here from these viewer questions that you're asking me. So, hey, I don't know if you will get this. Well, I did. But I'm trying to become a better person, and I'm trying to see changes, but I want to improve more. You sound like super eager and willing. I like you already. Also, I'm having problems with my girlfriend, but I'm starting to think that we're both too young. How old are you to be having these types of problems? Because we're only 19. You're cute. And I'm showing her that I am changing as a whole new, wiser, stronger person. Oh, like 19-year-old, like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed young man. Like, I'm all about this. And plus, I'm an overthinker. Oh, I'm liking you even more. So a lot of things race to my mind, but I'm trying to change that and improve for the better. Okay, first, what a young stud. I love this. And you're 19. You're already thinking on this level and thinking critically about yourself and not in questioning yourself, which is awesome. We're not going to learn that from traditional manhood. We have to learn that through hard knocks and ego, and like learning how to let go of how we expected things to be, and like not getting stuck with whatever roles we assume we had to have or who we thought we had to be. Like what you're doing speaks a lot to who I think you're capable of being and how things are going so far. And this is cool. So you're identifying as an overthinker, saying that you're an overthinker. I don't think that's a bad thing. It sounds like you're naturally pretty intuitive for whatever reason. And if you're thinking about things a lot, I'm sure you're 19 at this point. I trust your gut. You should be thinking about them. Yeah, I used to overthink a lot, right? Like that's part of being a human. And that's part of being a conscientious, intuitive human. And as we get older, we can learn how to mold that into a way that allows us to stay more attuned to ourselves and protect our energy, so to speak. But traditional manhood is not going to teach young men how to do that. So I love that you're doing it on your own, and I love how young and willing that you are. The second thing that you say is about your relationship at 19. I'm not sure if we should be having troubles like this. Relationships are really hard. And I hate to break it to you this young as a 19-year-old, but all those exciting, like chemical honeymoon feelings that we get at the beginning with relationships are really fun and exciting, but they don't stay forever. They don't stay for very long, actually. And that's not most of what relationships are made of. they are inherently complicated and they are inherently difficult. And us human beings tend to have baggage and unresolved stuff from being like complicated, like socially evolved beings. And when we get into safe relationships, romantic relationships that are close, it's gonna come up because it's a safe place for it to come up. And that's just the nature of the beast. That's the nature of being in romantic relationships as an adult that wants to be in monogamous, like meaningful, long-lasting, committed relationships. Right? Like, isn't Logan just a super nice guy? So what I want you to be easy on yourself. And I want you to be easy on your relationship. And I want y'all both to focus on yourselves and practice how to talk about your feelings, practice how to validate and empathize with your partner, practice how to have some conflict resolution with each other, and go experience life. And if your relationship can hold over time, that's a beautiful thing. And if not, you'll have many more. You're 19, and that's great. I love it for you. But go experience life out there, man. Be way easier on yourself and way less pressure on the relationship. And go have fun. Go let it all hang out as long as you're not hurting anybody. Are we allowed to ask questions? Yeah, totally. Ask questions. So what I'm doing is going through and answering viewer questions that I get through direct messages, and I ask permission to share. But if you just ask questions straight up here, like I'll see it, I'll try to answer it for you. I want to interact with you. I want to create value for you. And chances are, if you are experiencing that in the moment, other people are as well, and would benefit from hearing that. Recommendations on continuing to heal while still married and living with covert narcissist. I tend to be very leery of saying that if they're a narcissist, like if they were diagnosed by a psychologist. Are you saying like they have narcissistic personality disorder and you can validate that reliably? Or are you living with an abuser that's really savvy and good at covering up their crap and their assholery? Because those can be two very different, mutually exclusive things. So what I would tell you is, if you are married to somebody who is set in their ways of being a jerk and not looking out for you, then you need to do one of two things. Maybe both. One is figure out how to get yours and meet your own needs safely. And you don't necessarily have to abide by the rules of what we would expect, giving our vows with, if they're not. And I'm not saying stoop to their level, but I'm saying like take care of yourself. And second, if you're in this situation, is you need to consider if you want to stay in this, because they're not going to change unless they're actually looking to develop themselves. If they're looking to develop themselves, if they really want to do that, they can, and they will. But not because of how well or how much you love them, but because of how much they love you or they love themselves, and you don't get to control that at all. So what I would advise is to boundary up, take care of yourself, and if they can treat you reasonably, then okay, maybe you decide it's workable. And if they can't, then it should grow apart, because someone who is functioning from that level of belief systems like really cannot exist with someone that is doing their own thing like that. So, in therapy for a year, just started big healing last week. No, you won't. Okay, I'm glad you're in therapy. Keep talking to them about that. Why is it so lonely after creating boundaries and self-care? I think you asked that on a comment recently on a video. Did you? And I wanted to answer it with a video, and I forgot about doing it in the moment, and then you just said it now, and I think you did. So I'm glad you asked that. It's lonely because even though if we know someone is not good for us, we are social beings, and we develop extraordinarily strong relationships and strong connections with people. And even if they're not capable of creating a connection with us, what we realize in any kind of authentic way, who we expected them to be or thought they were to be as social beings ourselves. Again, like we're all egocentric to some degree. They take up a lot of room in our lives. And even when someone is not good for us, even if someone is actively hurting, if we have acclimated to them and adjusted our roles and responsibilities in life, or identify with being in a relationship with them, or in a relationship to begin with, saying goodbye to them is going to be very difficult. It's going to come with a lot of sadness. And yes, I was the one who asked that. I love it. I love it. The cosmos is so fun. And I think also, if you wouldn't mind my asking, that you're a male, live in a male meat suit, as I would say. If you could verify. But something that happens, especially for men, is there is such a social and cultural training from very early on to push out emotions, especially vulnerable ones, that we become ashamed of experiencing them. There is an association of shunning or social rejection on top of the experience of that emotion. In sadness, the purpose of sadness is to let us know that it's time to slow the F down, because there's just been a significant loss, and to pull our loved ones tight who are around us, and take an assessment of what is around and who we do have, and adjust to that change, and then have a chance to move forward. And a lot of times with men, what happens is, since there is such a shame and taboo around vulnerable experiences, period, that something like sadness, which slows us down for a period of time, it has to. That's the point of it as human beings in our psyche, is to make us stop so we can really take a look at all the things that have changed and move forward more strategically with reality in mind. But as men, we're also taught that productivity is key, and that is based on our roles as providers. And if we lose energy, we're going to be wimps and sissies and not be able to be independent. So a lot of times what happens is a lot of shame around being sad and even experiencing grief. And what we need to do as human beings to come to terms with what has occurred and let go. And in the end, I think, think it was Buddha who said it takes much greater strength to let go than to hold on. And as men, a lot of times we're taught that the strength is in holding on. And what I want you to give yourself permission to do is to be sad, and to not be ashamed of being sad, and let it run its course. Because it will, if you can let yourself do it. I am all lonely. It's okay to be lonely. Humans do that when we have to say goodbye. That's part of life. My ex-fiancée of 4 years left me, only giving excuses a month later, engaged with someone else. Oh, you dodged a bullet. Is turning off emotions for one person and start new that soon real? No. No, that was a rebound. That's why I say you dodged a bullet. Maybe he fell out of love with you. If it occurred in 1 month, he either fell out of love a long time before that happened, and you just hadn't caught up with it for whatever, you hadn't seen it, or he's faker or whatever, or it was never what you thought it was, and it's not what he thinks it is with this other person either, and you're dodging a bullet. Either way, so let it just do its thing. So narcissism is the new normal now. No, it's not. I actively talk about how the overuse of narcissism is completely watering it down and bastardized this concept in mental health that is important and is used to actively and systematically dehumanize statistically what tends to be men. Who's the best on this platform? I appreciate you. I'm sure there are other good ones. I appreciate your faith, brother. That makes me shine a little bit. Been talking to someone almost a year and a half, and one of his girlfriends asked me that he is married to. Ooh. Yeah, no, narcissism is not the new normal. What is the new normal is, I think, is people using these power and control tactics and coercion and manipulation on a grand scale, with even in spaces like social media, in spaces like politics, in spaces where you can get people swept up into tribalism. And that's, again, one of the reasons, one of the many reasons I'm doing this in this way, is that I want to impact as many different people as possible to share different cross sections of what it looks like to operate with the power of love, because that's really the answer in so many different ways. Because that is the only thing that's going to beat out the love of power. And as a human being who lives on the planet, and being the grandson of an Auschwitz survivor and growing up in an abusive household, recovering from addiction, like I've been through some things and lost a lot of people along the way, and a lot of pain that I personally have goes into what is being created here. And a lot of this is about leaving it all out on the field, because I don't know where this is going, but I know that I can do this, and I know how much this makes sense and this is needed. So that's what I'm going to do. Saying uncertified trauma survivor here. I love it. I just walked away. Being talking to someone almost a year and a half, and one of his girlfriend. Okay, I'm going to answer a few more questions here, and we're going to keep rocking and rolling. So I see you coach mainly men. Would you have a recommendation for me? I coach and work with all kinds of different people. What this page, again, just put it out, what this page is mostly advocates for is men's mental health, because it is systematically missing. And if we can turn male privilege into a civic duty for servant leadership, we can save the effing world. And that's what this is about. And that serves everybody. We can correct the issues going on with patriarchy. We can correct the issues going on with classism. We can correct the issues going on with spiritual abuse. We can reframe the duty of providing in masculinity as providing for a global community and for Gaia, and helping us all connect and figure out how to like literally save the freaking planet. Like we're about to, not too many centuries off from really toxifying this thing, but it's not too far off that we couldn't save this if we can just put all our great minds together and treat our earth like something that we have evolved to shepherd, because that is our freaking responsibility. Much appreciate your insight. Concern too much too soon. Why do you feel people defend politicians before their own friends and family? Because they don't know who they are. They don't know who they are. So many people are stuck in tribalism based on nationalism, based on color of their skin, based on their political affiliation, based on their religion, based on the frickin' brand of clothes that they wear. Like, people look for all kinds of excuses to throw their weight to a tribe rather than thinking for ourselves. And that is the inherent balance of what it takes to be what I call as an original spiritual gangster, is really speaking to why we are here on this earth, is to shine and serve with the gifts that we have to serve our community, our global community, meaningfully, while also doing no harm. It's serving with the power of love and making sure that we do no harm in the love of power. Any advice dealing with intrusive thoughts? Yeah. So with intrusive thoughts, first I'm curious if you know what the etiology of them is, and if you've been working on them with anybody. With intrusive thoughts, are really important that you do log, because they do happen very regularly. They're intrusive inherently. So you need to log time, date, what the thought is, and what was happening right before they began, so you can start figuring out the themes of what is going on with the intrusive thoughts. There's a ton that you can be doing with intrusive thoughts, because there's so much data. But we have to make sure that we're paying attention to them and tracking to them in incredibly calculated and strategic and effective ways, rather than looking at them with a scarcity kind of fear-based mindset that is going to continue potentiating the sympathetic nervous system and keep us dysregulated and feeding the fear that feeds the intrusive thoughts. But keep getting to this question here. Sorry, I have like high functioning ADHD, or we'll keep rocking with all the squirrel. Like what's happening? So I'm severely struggling with excuse me, health issues in what I know is a toxic relationship, but fear is keeping me in it. Please provide some guidance on whom I can turn to for help. My family is not an option. Mom, dad, and sister all have cancer and can't burden them with my stuff. Okay. If your mom, dad, and sister all have cancer, first I would say that's awful. I'm really sorry. Last, I'm saying that sounds like, what are the chances of that happening compared to how much have you already learned extreme independence from your family of origin and learn not to trust people? And it sounds like you're in a relationship that you either depend on and you're staying in it out of fear of what you might lose having chronic illness, or you're scared of them and being hurt by them. I'm not sure. So what I want to focus in on with you is the fear, because to me, that is the most primal piece of information that you're giving me that lends to what your most immediate needs are, and I don't want to do any harm. And I have to trust your fear. If your fear is based on what you might think might happen from the environment that has nothing to do with, if your fear has to do with how you think people might judge you, fuck it, do it. If your fear has to do with very real circumstances that will impact your physical health with a chronic illness or with being in an abusive relationship and not having anywhere else to go, trust your gut. Don't do anything rash or quick. That's really all I can say to you based on that very limited information. But especially when you say something is scary, that tells me that the risk factor could potentially be high, and I don't want to do any harm. Do you do paid Zoom consultations? I do not do paid Zoom consultations. I haven't been able to take new clients for a little while. I do have a lot of self-guided coaching plans on the website. If you go to the link in the bio, I created the Balance Man plan. It's the system of coaching plans that are designed to help you create your own balance based on living a purpose-driven life, doing a lot of that ego shedding, developing your own emotional intelligence so you can use that as a guide to stay clear of the social and cultural bullshit, heal from the family of origin stuff, and really dial into a purpose-driven way of doing things. So if you go to the link in the bio, there's a lot of information about this. They're really inexpensive options. It's collections of instructional videos that I've created and content that I've created on the way to developing this book. This book is a very small cross-section of what you can find in the coaching plans that is a call to action to men in reframing male privilege. And I'm trying to resolve the Me Too movement and save the world with this book. Sorry to have lofty goals, but that's what I'm doing. There are going to be other books coming out in the future that are different cross sections of this, around family and parenting, around natural spirituality, and this Gaia principle and eco-psychology that I'm going to be talking more about. However, if you go again onto this website, you can see a lot of these self-guided coaching plans are like $4.99 each. And again, 20% of proceeds all the time go to the Lifeline for Suicide Prevention Hotline. My TikTok mentor, Me Too mentor. Yeah, I'm saying I'm trying to cover this, trying to cover my bases here. Can you explain the difference between being bipolar and having borderline personality disorder? I can. And I'm going to answer that question right now. And that's actually going to be the last question that I'm going to be able to answer tonight, but I want to answer that one. So Having bipolar disorder means that you have alternating. Will you continue offering advice on TikTok? Yeah, I'll continue, and keep sending me your questions. I'll keep answering them on these forums. I want to give you the information. I want to make sure that everyone else can have the information. I want to help you set your freaking soul on fire, because I need your soul on fire. My kids need your soul on fire. Like, we need to be able to light each other's fires and get this going. So, of course, I'm going to continue answering your questions. Now, to this gentle person's question here about the difference between the two BPDs, borderline personality disorder and bipolar disorder. It is kind of tricky, the presentation initially. When I was working in hospital settings and high acuity settings for a long time, every now and again there would be a case where this was an area of debate. And we'd have these multidisciplinary team meetings. You have these people from all these different licenses, the medical doctors, the nurses, everybody going, is it borderline? Is it bipolar? I don't know. The cleanest way to see the difference in the moment is someone with bipolar. Look at the outbursts. Someone with bipolar disorder won't be able to stop. Someone with borderline personality disorder can rein it in when someone can dominate them in the space somehow. When they feel like they have to, they can stop. When someone has bipolar disorder, they won't be able to stop, and they'll keep going. That's really how you tell the difference in the moment. As far as the difference with the etiology of them and how they come about, bipolar disorder is one of those chemical imbalance ones. When it's happening in its pure state, it is about chemical imbalance. People that are bipolar, or people that have like schizophrenia or psychotic disorders that like start becoming delusional or hallucinating about stuff, like that is chemical stuff is not okay. It's not right. It needs to be adjusted, needs to be slowed down, or we need to figure out how to get out of those cycles. It's largely chemical. Now, borderline personality disorder, what a lot of research is coming out around in a similar way to narcissistic personality disorder, and not like narc and like Narc Talk USA and TikTok, but about like legit narcissistic personality disorder. We are now even finding that a lot of folks who had been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, similar to borderline personality disorder, it tends to be a collection of adverse childhood experiences and attachment injuries that play out in combinations with gender-influenced social and cultural training to present in very specific ways that are that do not get along with the other dogs in the dog park, so to speak. When anyone has a personality disorder, it means it's like they totally do not fit in groups and communities of people in this specific way, and this is how it goes wrong. So bipolar disorder, largely chemical. Borderline personality disorder, largely trauma and family of origin related confusion base. All right, folks, just had supracervical hysterectomy and behavioral therapy. Yeah, lots on behavioral therapy. I like behavioral therapy. It's a big part of reality reality therapy and choice theory. It's a big part of manifesting and these concepts of discipline equals freedom. That is a big part of how human beings are designed, is to physically move and to build and to be like group problem-solving machines. So if you have a therapist that understands what types of activities to prescribe you to do, or certain things that work for you, don't work for you, based on how you function, then behavioral therapy concepts can be great. I fell in love with doing this work largely in a behavioral therapy space, working with at-risk youth in a wilderness therapy setting. Like no electricity, like living in the woods with kids coming down from youth detention centers and high acuity settings. And it was largely a therapy and counseling setting, but based on behavioral expectations and accountability. In logical and natural consequences, and how that fits into to the group dynamic and healing in a village. So I believe in it a lot. EMDR therapy, yes. EMDR therapy is, that's cool. Please share a link to your content. Yeah, go check out the link in the bio. If you like what you see, share that with your people. Again, this started out as making sure that there was a space for men to not kill themselves and die from overdoses, because my childhood friends, that's what was happening to them. Said I got clean in my early 20s, and that was one of the ways that one of the only things that I knew to help people that weren't willing to ask for help themselves. And it has developed into this other thing where I've realized that men who are very sick these days, emotionally and physically and socially and behaviorally in so many different ways, are functioning from a very old way of doing things, when the answer to literally to saving the world as we know it has with us setting our souls on fire. So that's what I'm doing, and it's for all of us. I'm not ignoring women. I'm not ignoring people of color. I'm not doing those things. I'm trying to wake up all the neos. So that's what's happening. Can you effectively do your job via video conference? Yeah, totally. Especially after the pandemic, I realized how much more effective virtual work could be. So if you have your doubts about doing virtual work, like, go experiment with it a little bit. I was pretty optimistic about it leading into the pandemic. When I was in graduate school in Portland, Oregon, one of the jobs that I held down was working at a suicide hotline in the Pacific Northwest, which is like one of the heavy beds of suicide rates. And I was in grad school. I was getting supervision hours and hours towards an addiction specialist licensure. So it helped, and it was good work. But I realized how much impact we can make in someone's life with a brief intervention, and even when we can't physically be with them. Is there more potential physically being with someone? Absolutely. However, can an eager mind engage actively in this kind of space and get what they need to grow? Absolutely. I have to bet on that. None of this makes sense if I don't. And I absolutely believe in it. KK, gotta go, grind, work stuff. Yeah, buddy, thank you for everything you do. Yeah, Zyfurious, right back at you. All right, folks, I gotta wrap it up for tonight. Always a pleasure. Gonna keep rocking out with these DM. Thanks for the roses tonight, y'all. I really appreciate those. I'm going to sign out for the night, but keep sending me these questions so that I can answer them for you. I really enjoy being a part of the journey with you, and not only with shooting the videos, but this is really what this is about, is creating a community of healing, and knowing that all of you are going out into your own lives and into other people's lives and passing this along like that. That is what it's about. All of us are throwing out starfish together, and if we keep doing that, sky's the limit, y'all. Keep your body healthy. Keep your mind aligned with your purpose and your people. Peace.